All right. So, gentlemen and ladies, we are today going to explore the bigotry that is superphobia in our society. And I'm going to be focusing on a new movement that is trying to promote a slur known as Cissexual. But I'm going to get more into that later. What I'm going to start with today is proof that there's a lot of superphobia that is ingrained within our society. And I'm going to do this by just doing a little search online without any filters. So right now I'm using DuckDuckGo. I'm not even using Google. And Google, we know it's all very subversive, very problematic, and is very biased. I'm not even using that. I'm using DuckDuckGo. So this is just going to show me the stuff that's super popular right now. And it's just more proof that this is really ingrained in our society. So the first thing that pops up is an article by Snopes fact-checking the whole meme of "Did Super Straight Start on 4chan by Nazis?", which is just a smear campaign by superphobic people on Twitter. But let's go to Snopes because they're fact-checking it. Let's see if they do a good job. They do not. Take a wild guess. They most certainly do not. So we're going to go here. We're going to scroll down to the meat and potatoes. So the claim that they're fact-checking, so this isn't them saying this is the claim. The viral super straight trend originated on 4chan among members of the far-right Nazi movement. So that's the claim. They rate it as mostly false. This is an entirely superphobic rating. It should be entirely false, 100% false. And let's explore more. So what they say is what's false, under what's false, is it is false to claim that super straight originated on 4chan. Full stop. That means it's false, 100% false. What more do you need? And now, after that, and this is the meat and potatoes of what they think is false, but the phrase and hashtag did go viral on 4chan. It went viral on Twitter. It went viral on TikTok. It went viral all over the internet. And this is what you have to say. This is what you have to say to us. This is just proving absolute superphobia. It is absolutely just pure bigotry. And what's more is, under the undetermined section, what's undetermined, they say they are unable to confirm if creator Kyle Royce is himself a member of the neo-Nazi movement. This is just absolute, just sleazy. This is sleazy. He's like, I don't even know how old he is. I think he's like a young teen or young, like early 20s guy. I don't even think he's white. I don't even know what he is, to be honest. He might be mixed. I don't know. But there's no reason why he would be associated with this in any possible way. Why do you even need to mention it? There's no need to mention it. They mention it because they want to associate our movement with just bad guys, because they want us to be shut down. They don't want us to be accepted in society. So now let's continue, though. So under what's true, the super straight trend originated on TikTok through a user named Kyle Royce. Okay, so that's true, but that completely contradicts the statement, which means that that's not what's true about the statement. And then went viral on 4chan, again, with the whole viral thing. A popular forum with members of the neo-Nazi movement. Okay, but 4chan has literally all kinds of people on it. It's literally a shit show. It has bad people. It has good people. It has everybody on it. That's already a problematic, or not problematic, but ignorant statement. But I'm not somebody who uses 4chan. I don't really care about this. But it just proves their ignorance and how they're willing to just make up stuff on the spot just to try to smear us. But I'm not here to attack Snopes. Snopes is always like this with almost every topic. Let's go and get to the meat and potatoes of those who hate us. All right. So the next thing, which is the first thing that pops up after like the news section, is this article on Wikia, the LGBTA Wikia. So this is the think tank section here. So we're on this site. This is the super straight section, the super straight page of their wiki. So they put this these two boxes here warning people. They're like, this identity is not a part of the LGBT plus community. Yeah, so they're stating that we're not accepted in their community. This wiki is in no way supports this identity and does not accept this identity into the community. So they're openly saying that they don't accept us. And throughout this article, you're going to see that they do not respect us either. So this article is strictly educational. Education on these terms is important so people can stay safe online and know what to avoid. So they're saying they're only putting this here so that people can avoid interacting with us and avoid hearing about our existence. Incredibly problematic. And then they say, viewer discretion is advised and all that. But let's go into this. This is going to be a very telling video. So super straight is the sexual orientation for those who are heterosexual, but only like those who identify with their assigned gender at birth. Interesting, they use the word like instead of attracted to, but otherwise, I guess pretty accurate. This orientation is most commonly used by cisgender people. However, it is claimed that they only view the biological sex. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Although it is commonly known, those who use super straight consider transgender people to be their assigned gender at birth, such as considering transgender men and women and transgender women as men. Okay, so this is a subversion of the truth. As super straight people, when we are talking about our sexuality, we are not referring to gender at any point. They even allude to that here. So we do not see transgender people as the sex that they are not, but their gender is not relevant. Just to make that clear. I know that that's something people can easily confuse, so I'm not going to say that this is outwardly superphobic. It is a ignorant assumption, but it's not purely hateful. But these people who wrote this article are incredibly hateful, and I will show that as we move on. But those may say they see transgender people as the gender they are, but consider sex characteristics rather than gender. Yes, so that is actually what the supersexual movement is. It's just people who have preferences that are based on sex, not based on gender, or they could like genders or not like genders. They might have different preferences around that, but that's not the definition of supersexual or super straight. It has more to do with the sex. Okay, so they acknowledge that they have heard what our term actually means. So other groups have adopted this terminology by creating terms such as supersexual, super gay, super lesbian, super bisexual. Yeah, we accept these people into our super straight movement. I am totally in love with the supersexual term. It is fantastic. We love our super gay and super lesbian and super bi brethren. They are on our side and we accept them completely. I'm glad that they mentioned them. So supersexual is considered the umbrella term for all other super orientations. However, it is commonly known, and here's where things get problematic. However, it is commonly known that these groups may hold transphobic ideologies or misconceptions. First off, commonly known, I want to see a citation for that. Also, this is not defining of what somebody who is supersexual is. And it's incredibly superphobic to make this claim. The whole point of the supersexual movement, it was created out of the super straight movement as a response to people hating on those who have orientations related to genitalia or related to biological sex. People claiming that they are transphobic simply because they don't want to date a trans person. That is literally what the movement is. So they're just proving that the movement is needed here. Also, to disagree with trans ideology is also, it's a bit of a stretch to say that it's transphobic, but you can agree with trans ideology and still be supersexual as well. There's a lot of trans people on our side as well, I would like to point out. Okay, so here's where things get really interesting, and this is why I made this video. They created a new term. It's a slur, and I'll explain why it's a slur. But they created a new term because they want to have control of the narrative. The people that hate us, the people that do not accept us, and want to keep us hidden in society. They've created a term called Cissexual. They say it is an alternative for those for non-transphobic and non-mental health reasons find little to no attraction to transgender people. So first off, they're essentially insinuating that people who are super sexual, super gay, super lesbian, super straight, they essentially are insinuating that we are the way we are because we are transphobic. Essentially, like, I'll get into this mental health section in a bit. It's a huge issue. So let's just go to this article, the cissexual term. All right, so I got this article open, this page. So they made this up. I want to point out before I go through this that this term was coined on this site. So they made it up on the spot on March 11th of 2021. As I make this video, it is March 23rd. So it's not even 2 weeks old. And they made it just in response to us having our own term. They just want to control the narrative. They want to control other people and their preferences and their ideas and their perspectives. It's all about power. It's all about controlling and being manipulative and abusive. But let's get into this. So, cissexual, or the romantic alternative, cisromantic, is a modifier used for those who experience exclusive attraction towards cisgender people. Okay, so that's supersexual. But they say there's a difference, and let's look at this. A cissexual person may no longer be attracted to a person upon learning that they are trans. But this does not mean that they hold prejudices against trans people. That is the perfect definition, not of cissexual, but of supersexual. A person who is cissexual may be heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, as long as that the person of their attraction is cisgender to their knowledge. This is not a queer identity, but queer individuals may use it. So cissexual, again, is just supersexual. But they're essentially going to insinuate that if you have prejudices against trans people, that makes you supersexual, but if you don't, that makes you cissexual, and that's incredibly superphobic. All right, so let's move on. So here's where it gets really, really gross. So this term is also not exclusive to cisgender individuals. This term can be used by transgender people as well. I'm pretty sure cissexual can be used by trans people as well. Some examples of when this term may be useful. Okay, so they give you some examples of, like, essentially reasons why somebody might identify with being cissexual or supersexual, as I would rather use. So take note on what they put first and what they don't mention in these 4 bullet points and then in the section underneath. So let's go through this. So someone, due to personal trauma from someone who happened to be transgender, feels uncomfortable with being with another trans individual. So essentially what they're saying here is a reason why somebody would be cissexual. And here's the thing. I want to point this out as I read through this. They see cissexual as legitimate, but super straight as not. And this is what they see as being the definition of somebody who's legitimately cissexual, but they exclude all other reasons. So let's look into this. So essentially what they're saying here in this statement is if somebody was hurt by a trans person in the past, it's legitimate for them to feel uncomfortable being with another trans individual. Essentially what they're saying is somebody who is cissexual or super straight, as they're implying, they're essentially that way because they were hurt by somebody in the past who was trans. That's the equivalent of this is essentially saying that somebody is gay because they were hurt by a woman in the past, and now they're afraid of women and have prejudices against women, so now they want to be gay. That's essentially what they're saying here. It's the same concept, and it's really disgusting. Let's move on, though, because it just keeps getting worse and worse. But this is pretty bad. Okay, so the next one is someone who, due to stigma or anxiety of how society will view their partnership, loses desire to date a transgender person. Okay, so this is also disgusting. So here's the thing. I'm not saying this isn't something that happens. It's possible for this to happen. But essentially what they're saying here, and they're putting this as the second reason why somebody would be cissexual or supersexual, which is the correct term, is supersexual, not cissexual. A reason for being that way would be, oh, you're afraid of other people thinking of you differently. That's disgusting. That's like saying a lesbian girl is only lesbian because her peers are lesbian and they're peer pressuring her into being lesbian. I'm not saying this kind of stuff doesn't happen, but it's really disgusting that they're putting this as like the second reason why somebody would be supersexual. It's really gross. And this is a LGBTA website. It's supposed to be an inclusive kind of movement. This is disgusting. All right, so let's move on to something else. The next section. So someone who is transgender themselves, who, due to fear or pressure of the possibility of their transgender partner having contagious dysphoria, feels uncomfortable at the idea of dating trans individuals due to their own dysphoria being stressful to handle. What the fuck? I'm not saying this can't happen, but this is, again, just really disgusting. They're essentially saying it's due to like internalized hate or fear or uncomfortableness with being trans. Like they don't want the other person to be like them, and it again as the third reason why somebody would be super sexual. Like this is just terrible. Moving on. Someone whose sexual or romantic attraction bases around gender experiences. Somebody whose sexual romantic attraction bases around gender experiences, and due to being unable to relate to a transgender individual's experience, lacks the ability to form attraction to them. Essentially what they're saying here is the equivalent of saying a gay person only dates other men because they can't relate with women or can't get along with them. It's essentially what they're saying, because they can't relate to their experience. This is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying any of these things are impossible. It's just disgusting to list these as the four main reasons why somebody would be cissexual as their term, but what they mean is us, supersexual people. It's just really bad. This is just terrible. So under this, they say, in some cases, this may include someone whose sexual or romantic attraction is based around parental attraction and wishes for biological children. Okay, so let's look at the first thing. Essentially, the first line here is the equivalent of saying somebody's gay because they have daddy issues. That's essentially what they're saying. This is just absolute superphobia. It is absolutely just pure bigotry. I'm not saying it can't happen, but they list this before they list one of the main reasons why we are actually supersexual if you're super straight. At least this doesn't apply to other supersexual people, but it applies to super straight people, is the wish for biological children. This is something that is quite common amongst actual supersexual people. This should have been probably the first or second reason they listed, and they barely mention it in this entire article, by the way. And also, people hate us for this as well. They try to say that, oh, we only want children because society's taught us to want children, and we don't actually want children and all this stuff. And they make antinatalist arguments. But anyways, let's move on. / does not want to adopt for personal reasons. However, this is not common use. No, it is common use. It's probably in the top 2 common uses for why we would be supersexual. But of course, they say as many cisgender individuals are unable to bear children themselves. Yes, that's true. That's especially true for cis lesbians, or not cis lesbians, super lesbians. See, they're confusing me with their word salad as well. For super lesbians and super gays, that's super true. For super straights, this can also be true as well. There's lots of people that are like that. It's not the only reason why somebody would be supersexual, but they're using this as like an argument for that. That's not the reason why they're actually transphobic. That's essentially what they're implying, and it's really disgusting. Because they know they can't argue against somebody who wants children. If you want children, it's just like there's no argument. You can't convince me. Like you're going to have to convince me to not want children, which is just a disgusting thing for somebody to try to do to somebody else. If you're going to try to convince me to date trans people when I want biological children. So anyways, let's move on though. There's more, unfortunately. So cissexual versus supersexual. They have a section to try to explain the difference. While holding similarities to the more extremely viewed and currently controversial superstraight, I guess it's fine to say it's controversial because they've made it controversial. I guess it's accurate. People who are cissexual or cisromantic are not actively transphobic. That is correct about supersexual as well. That is what the entire movement is based upon, is the idea that we're not transphobic simply because we are not attracted to trans people. Now, I'm not saying there's not supersexual people who are transphobic, but I find that most of the time when people call somebody transphobic, it's usually because they disagree with trans ideology on some sort of level, and the people who agree with trans ideology, they're unable to debate them because they just refuse to, or they refuse to explain the misconceptions to them, and they're just outwardly just really toxic. So I'm not saying there aren't transphobic people, but this is not what the movement is about. It's never been about that. It started not being that way. It's still not that way. It doesn't matter who joins the movement. You can be supersexual and be transphobic, and you can be supersexual and not be transphobic. And even if you can somehow prove statistically that it's more common, it still doesn't invalidate supersexual as a thing. You can be like, most people who are transphobic are human. Does that mean that human is therefore inherently transphobic? And you can even, reverse that to something else. Maybe that's not the best example, but you get the point. Like it's not what we are. It's superphobic to say that we are. But let's continue. But rather may have discomfort at the idea of being sexual or romantic partners with a trans person, while not having an issue with trans people living their own lives as their proper genders. So, again, they're saying this is what cissexual is, not what supersexual is. I think that's what supersexual is. I know that is what supersexual is because I am supersexual. Now, and then they say their proper genders, again, inserting their ideology. But continuing, they believe they are truly their real gender without question to it. Yeah, some super straights do, some don't. That's not characteristic of what we are. A person may experience such attraction due to social stigma. Here we go again with the absolute bigotry, the absolute superphobia. A person may experience attraction due to social stigma, they put as the first reason, personal trauma as the second reason, or simply preference in regards to sexual activities. They put that as the last reason, and this is the first time they mention it in this entire article. This is the main reason why somebody is supersexual. If it's not wanting biological children, it's preference for certain sexual activities, as in certain genitalia. Or sexual experiences in general. So this is the main thing. This is what they should have listed first, because they're not listing it first and they're not highlighting it. It is proof that they are superphobic. Being cissexual may still be, in some cases, considered offensive. However, uses of this term should be carefully monitored, as this term was made to be non-harmful. No, the term was made to be extremely harmful to supersexual people. It is a slur. It should be treated as such. It should be essentially filtered out in chats, because it is that bad of a slur. It is terrible. And they say it could, even their own term that they just made up, by the way, in this article, could still, in some cases, be considered offensive. And what they mean is not offensive to us in the ways that I have highlighted, but offensive to trans people who want to force people to date them, essentially, is what this is about. And I'm not saying that trans people are like that. We have lots of trans people who are on our side with the supersexual movement, but I'm just saying that this is the issue here. And then let's go to the last section here. So, preference versus modifier. This term is often called a preference. However, many cissexual people feel no attraction to transgender individuals due to personal reasons. This is really telling. This shows that they are not individualists. They do not believe in freedom, human rights, sovereignty of individuals. And let's explore this. So this term is often called a preference. Yeah. However, many cissexual people feel no attraction due to personal reasons. So apparently, if you have personal reasons for your preference, it is not a preference. You see, they do not see us as legitimate. They do not see us as valid. We are definitely valid. You can have preferences for personal reasons. Now, I know that there's lots of people, they don't like the word preference because they think it implies a position on the whole debate about choice or like not choice when it comes to your sexual preferences. But the thing is, in my opinion, you can have preferences that are a choice and preferences that are not a choice, and it doesn't really matter. And they're saying if you have preferences due to personal reasons, your personal preferences are illegitimate, essentially, because these people, they work in groups. They're groupthink. They're the mob. They don't understand that people have individual sexual preferences or orientations. They just don't respect it if it's personal. So because of this, but essentially what they're doing here is they're implying that it's due to illegitimate personal reasons like mental health issues, being traumatized by somebody who's trans and shit like that. It's just god-awful what they're saying here. Let's continue. Because of this, it cannot exactly be defined as a preference. No, it can be. However, it is not exactly a sexuality either. See, they're saying we're not legitimate. Well, it is a sexuality. Instead, here's the thing. It's a sexuality because it is genital preference, and it is what we like to have sex with. That is what it is. It is part of the definition of what we like. If you are super straight, that is your full sexuality. If you're super sexual, yes, you can say that is, I guess, a modifier. But let's continue. So instead, it's best described as a modifier to add to one's sexual orientation. This is accurate for supersexual, but it's not accurate for somebody who says they are super gay or super lesbian or super straight. To say you are super straight, that is your full sexual orientation with all of the details of exactly what it is that you like and want in terms of what you could say is sexuality. So being cissexual as well as being non-cissexual, I'm not even going to open this link. This is obviously another made-up term. Are both due to mental or emotional health or struggles with connection. Again, they're just saying if you're cissexual, you're mentally ill and you struggle with connection is essentially what they're saying. And they're saying classifying those as a preference can be harmful and misinforming. No, your whole term is harmful and misinforming. Your entire article is misinforming and harmful. Being supersexual is not harmful to say that it is a preference. If somebody is that way for these reasons, then they are not actually that way. If they're supersexual due to mental health issues, it's like, yeah, they're probably not actually supersexual, though. They have some other issues that are masking what's going on. And they know that, and that's why they're using it as a weapon by saying that that's who we are. It is incredibly disgusting. And again, this was made on March 11th, like super straight. I can't remember the exact date when the first TikTok was released, but this is obviously just a reaction to that. And this is brand new. I'm reading this not even 2 weeks after this article was made. not even 2 weeks after this entire term was made, and they're talking as if it's already a legitimate term, that people actually use it, that it's really common, and it's really disgusting what they're trying to do. This is a disinformation campaign. It is a psyop, and they're just creating a slur out of nowhere to try to oppress us. And these people are our enemies. This website, LGBTA Wiki, if they don't remove this, they need to remove that rainbow banner on their website because they are not inclusive at all. They need to remove this. And I'm not saying people should be censored. I'm not somebody who's in favor of censorship or cancellation, but this is not a good look on you guys. You shouldn't be saying these things. People have freedom to say these things, and I'm glad that we can see this because then because we can see it, we can call it out, and we can see where the danger is, where people are going, and we can see that the bigotry exists and that it's a problem. If it was hidden, it would be an even bigger problem, but this needs to be dealt with. Let's look at the comments. So there's this guy, or sorry, not guy, I don't know what he is, or who this person is. My apologies. Crypto Crew. So this person, they make some comments that are pretty problematic as well, and pretty telling, and they talk as if this article is something really dear to them, as if maybe they were involved in the creation of it or something. I'm not really too sure about that, but let's go through it. So I'm going to skip to the parts that are really, really bad. I mean, all of it's bad, but let's continue. Okay, so this person here, they say, I just don't have interest in dating trans people. It's not because they're trans or anything, it's because I'm homosexual and I have a genital preference. That is exactly characteristic of somebody who is super gay. That is absolutely accepted in our movement, but this person doesn't accept them, and let's explore this. So this person says, okay, I don't really understand. It's okay that they don't really understand. We're not people that are going to be really toxic towards people who don't understand our movement. But they show some bigotry that shows that actually they do understand, they just hate us. So, as trans people, with bottom surgery, would still match your preference, and still would be the gender they say they are. But I'm glad you have a term to identify with. So this is really passive-aggressive. So this is disgusting. So they're saying that bottom surgery should match your preference, therefore you should be with somebody who has bottom surgery. First off, okay, I'm not saying this to piss off anybody who's had surgery. If you had surgery, I'm not saying that your surgery isn't legit. I'm not saying that it's not something that you can enjoy. I'm not saying that you can't call it what you want. And I'm not saying that you can't pretend that it's real. But at the end of the day, it's not the same thing. Let's look at, like, say, for example, the penis. The penis cannot ejaculate if it is a bottom surgery penis. It's not going to feel the same. It's going to have a similar shape, maybe a similar look. It's not going to be exact. You can make it as exact as you want, but it's still not going to have the same functionality. There's going to be certain aspects to it that aren't exactly the same. And you can't force a gay person to be with somebody like that. And for a bottom surgery vagina, this is probably even more true. A real-life vagina can give birth to children. People who want children, that's automatically, like, bottom surgery automatically doesn't work. It doesn't work for them. And then also, a real vagina self-lubricates, has a certain pH level. It feels different, has a different shape inside. It has a different level of ability to handle different pressures. It can stretch and not stretch, and it can contract during orgasm and a bunch of other things. It doesn't have hair growing in it, and there's lots of other things that are very, very different. Now, you can have a bottom surgery that goes really, really well. It looks very, very real, and that's fine, but that's not going to be the same for somebody who's super straight. They really have a specific preference, and it's not the same thing. You can't pretend it's the same thing. It is gaslighting to say it's the same thing. It is abusive to say that it is the same thing. You're essentially forcing people to like you, to want to be with you, and to change their sexuality for you so you can feel more accepted. That's just not right. And at the end of the day, even if you can make it look almost exactly the same and almost get the perfect functionality. For super straight people, I'm going to make this claim right now, without a lot of evidence, because lots of people make similar claims like this all the time. But we're hardwired to be attracted to things that are associated with real females that are fertile, even if we don't want to have children ourselves. If you think of something that's female, automatically in our minds we're partially turned on. If you're, say, a super straight male, for example. Just knowing, even if you look exactly like a female pretty much, and your bottom surgery went very well, just knowing deep down that it's not a real woman in terms of the sex. They can be a real woman in terms of the gender, sure. In terms of the sex, just knowing that deep down, it just doesn't work with our minds that have evolved the way that they have. We are born this way. And even if we weren't born this way, it doesn't mean it's not legitimate. It just irks us. It doesn't make us feel like we're with what we want. And at the end of the day, you can say what you want. You can pretend to be what you want when it comes to sex, but you can't change your sex. You can change your gender, but you really can't change your sex. It's just reality. There's not much more really to say about that. Like, anything else that they can try to argue around this is just going to be a word salad. It's going to be manipulative. It's going to be abusive and gaslighting. And I just don't have time for it. And again, this guy says down here, I like men with their genitals, they got assigned at birth. Please respect my preferences. He's saying, I'm not disrespecting your preferences. I'm just confused. Essentially trying to argue that his preference is illegitimate. This person, like, you can't, I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that, like, he doesn't understand that bottom surgery isn't the same thing. It's really not the same thing. Moving on, this person gets it. So super straight, but better. This is in response to the title article, Cissexual. I am grossed out. I am grossed out as well. Ping E5. It is disgusting that people have made a term like this, which is just a slur, because they're essentially saying that this is a term like super straight, but it's better because we think super straight is bad and we need to change it. That's essentially what they're saying. Down here, Crypto Crew again says SuperSexual is claiming that one's biological sex is more important than one's gender. This is incredibly manipulative. They're essentially claiming that SuperSexual people are saying that biological sex is more important than one's gender in an objective way. In no way does SuperSexual say that. What we're saying is that it is more important to us in terms of our preference of what we want in a partner. We don't really care about the gender, we care about the sex when it comes to what we want as a partner. It has nothing to do with what's more important in terms of like objective reality in a universal way, like he's implying, or they're implying. This is disgusting that they're implying this. Even if somebody said this, I don't think that's even necessarily transphobic, like this person is implying. But even so, like, it's just so bad that they're attaching this to SuperSexual and saying that therefore Cissexual is a better term. It's not. Because again, they're saying it's due to personal experience or mental health, feeling disconnected, and blah, 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 blah. So illegitimate things. They're essentially trying to get us to use this term. Because once we use this term, guys, this is the trap. If we accept Cissexual as the media tries to push it, because we know this is going to get out there eventually, if anybody who's actually SuperSexual starts using it, they're going to use this as a weapon against us. Because they're going to say, by definition, look at all this, it's not legitimate. Because they're trying to essentially attach this to illegitimate things and say that we are nothing but transphobic. And then we essentially agree with their narrative if we start using their term. So guys, we really need to stop falling for traps like that. Let's not use Cissexual. It is a slur. It should be treated like a slur. Alright, so this has been a analysis of superphobic bigotry that has been created in reaction to the super straight movement that I've seen just from literally a search, just like a little Stay super.